Alright, now after all that anticipation of the amount of speculation there is about Gear 5, all those theories out there, even just right after Gear 4 was a thing, I believe there were theories out there throwing all kinds of possibilities for Gear 5. Now, all these theories that they really started coming out and they really started escalating in recent chapters, because in the latest chapters of One Piece, we see the Gorosei talking about a fruit that hasn't been awakened for centuries, right? And that they clearly hinted towards that the fruit is in Wano and one of the pirates has it. Well, not one of the pirates, but that somebody in Wano has that fruit. Now, there were a lot of theories out there about who the Gorosei were talking about, which fruit were they talking about. But I guess some popular theories were like, it's Zunisha because the Gorosei was saying that, but also Zunisha was coming. Also, some theories were like, Zunisha might be a devil fruit that hasn't awakened or something like that, like an island that ate an elephant devil fruit or something of the sort, or it's Kid's fruit or Law's fruit. But I think it was clearly laid out that it was Luffy's fruit because of that conversation, not a conversation, but who talking about the sun god Nikka and him having a devil fruit stolen from him by Shanks, which is the Gomu Gomu no Mi, and the fact that the world government had a special convoy for that fruit to go somewhere. I mean, it was more likely that it was going to be Luffy's fruit, but again, I guess some of these theories coming from the point of view that you never know where the story is going to go, because you know Oda, he could have chosen another fruit, but I guess it just makes sense, and this way with the reveal, Luffy needed this. He needed this power up in order to beat Kaido, to beat a Yonko, right? But before we get to that, I just think it's interesting how the Gorosei is saying that the world government hasn't been able to get their hands on the Gomu Gomu, or the Hito no Mi model Nikka for like centuries, but they're saying that they had a convoy with the devil fruit on it, a world government convoy. So it's like, it's more like they couldn't keep their hands on it, right? I mean, they should have just had a marine representative just eat the fruit because of the risk that it poses as the fruit is, rather than it being in another user, right? But yes, I think it's amazing just how Oda has been telling, bro, for the entirety of the story, we never knew the main character's true devil fruit's name. Like, we only knew that it was the Gomu Gomu no Mi because that's the basis of the fruit. That's the base ability that it gives the user. But the actual name is the Hito no Mi, and it's a mythical Zoan model Nikka. Now I think it's reference that Nikka can also mean sun god, or that's the name, the epithet of the god Nikka is the sun god, but it's not really clear yet as to what kind of abilities this grants Luffy, because what the Gorosei alluding to is that before awakening, the fruit really just gives the user it just changes the user's body and gives them the properties of rubber. So, which is what Luffy basically was before he awakened, which is what Luffy pre-time skip and now for post-time skip until like chapter 1043, right? Now, a lot of fans, including myself, I complain that Luffy's devil fruit is too basic. Like, if you compare it to other fruits, and the fact that with fruits like Katakuri, knowing that Luffy could have been like that, but it's just Luffy devil fruit wasn't like that. But now that we get this awakening and we see all this crazy stuff that Luffy's doing, bro, Luffy's crazy right now with this awakening. He's doing crazy stuff right now. He's doing crazy tune, like it seems like when he's in his awakened form, like in this Nikka form, right? He's using this goofy energy, all sort of this goofy Toon Force energy, to where we see when Kaido hits him with with one of his attacks, the Ragnaroku. His eyes pop out, but no, not only his eyes, it also affects all the other people that see Luffy. Now, this could be just like a stylistic choice to match Luffy on Oda's part, but maybe it's Luffy augmenting reality to have other characters act like this, because if he has the powers of a god, then all these things could be possible. That's what's wonky about this. It's like we can't tell, is it something that people perceived to be an abnormal force of nature, so they couldn't really understand this ability, and then they just had named it after the sun god, but which doesn't really make sense. I feel like just taking what the Gorosei said literally, it's limited by the user's imagination, right? So maybe after Shanks told Luffy that he ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi, in Luffy's mind right away, he thought to himself, oh, my arms can stretch, or he just assumed that he's gonna gain the powers of rubber. Unless you can say that Luffy didn't really know about Devilfoots then, so that really doesn't make sense. But I still think it's something that extends to where it's Luffy believing that he still has a Gomu Gomu no Mi, right? But I think he can tell to an extent that there's something has changed in his abilities, but he still has that belief that he's using the Gomu Gomu no Mi, so he's still using rubber properties and these rubber abilities, right? But yeah, back to bro, Luffy's doing crazy shit right now. There's this panel where Kaido just he hits Luffy with a blast breath, right? And Luffy's off of Onigashima, and then he does some wild coyote stuff. He runs on the air. Now, one could say that Luffy's rubberifying the air, so he's using that as some kind of platform, but he creates friction tracks as he runs in the air, and that leaves flames. This is why I say that if this is how Luffy imagines things, right? Luffy has a goofy imagination, he's very creative, right? This could be how he's augmenting reality. But then again, this could be just like a stylistic choice on Oda's part, and it's still like what the Gorosei was saying, that the Hito no Mi, it transforms the user's body to rubber. Then with that rubber body, they can create all kinds of combinations, all kinds of attacks, abilities with that rubber body, but it's still limited within the properties of rubber, within the abilities of rubber. But then one would kind of question, where does the human mythical aspect come into play here? Because I question this as well, because it's like, sure, it turns the user's body into rubber, right? And if what the user can do with that rubber body is just limited by their imagination, even if it's just upon awakening, then it should just still be a rubber fruit, right? Even if it's it kind of just doesn't follow the natural, usual trends of awakening that we've seen so far, from Doflamingo to Karakuri, where the paramecias, they only affect the ground, right? So I guess it could have been called a special paramecia, because upon awakening, not only does it allow Luffy to do that, he can also, his rubber gets stronger, he gains extra abilities, like his rubber is more malleable, right? It's harder. That's as the Gorosei confirmed, he now has a harder rubber body, or it's now stronger, it's more resilient to attacks now. And we've seen Luffy even mold himself to Kaido's we've seen Luffy mold himself to the shape of Kaido's club to lessen the blow of his attacks, or maybe it was just to mock him, right? But the point is, I believe that there's another point to the human aspect, that's like, maybe Nikka is the god of creativity or something like that. Because I think that if Luffy becomes aware that he has the human fruit, I don't believe his moveset would change, right? But I do believe he will gain more abilities that are not actually related to rubber. Because how does the human aspect actually come into play here? Because unless it goes this route, unless it goes a route in which I've been recently thinking about, which could come into play, which could explain how these mythical fruits or just devil fruits in general are created, right? So like if you think about it, I'm a mythical Zoan fruit, right? It's really just a legend that used to exist, like the dragons, the phoenix. These are all mythical creatures that used to exist in the One Piece world, right? Potentially. So making that kind of similar connection, if the story is going in the route that the only abilities that Luffy gains are rubber abilities, which I think is the least likely route, because I don't think Oda is drawing the panels in an unorthodox way for nothing. There has to be some augmentation of reality that's going on with Luffy's fruit. But as I was saying, one way this could happen is that since the mythical Zoans are just, well, you could say the reincarnation of mythical creatures or their souls, since the Gorosei have confirmed that now Zoans have a will of their own, which means they do have choice, right? Which I think for the most part in the One Piece world, you can say that they have souls, they still have souls, so you can call it reincarnation, right? When a user dies and then the fruit soul also leaves and then it goes to occupy another fruit. So I think, is it actually possible that this Nikka person, because the way who spoke about him, it's as if this is someone who walked amongst because the way that who spoke about him, he spoke about him like an entity that walked amongst the peasants, like he used to be someone who used to exist. For example, if you can take a Roger, for example, right? If Roger was able to accomplish maybe something even more grandiose than what he has done, which would be crazy in of itself, but the point is, if Roger was able to do something which was classified as unimaginable, or even within the One Piece world, like amongst the top tiers, they couldn't even begin to imagine accomplishing doing anything like it, it's possible that Roger could become a myth, right? So you see where I'm going with this, is that maybe this Nikka 800 years ago during the Void Century or something, they had the Gomu Gomu no Mi, right? And then they awakened that fruit, but because they were so strong or so powerful, or because he had done a lot of things, right? Freeing the slaves, confronting the celestial dragons, all these great things, to where he's even carved things into poneglyphs, to where people have revered him as an entity, as a savior, like on some Jesus shit, right? And it's even to the point where even Roger, when he read whatever he found at Laughter, but I think it's assumed that they found out about whatever was happening during the Void Century, right? He found out Nikka's backstory, well, Joyboy's backstory, and Roger, he laughed. He reveals. He said he wishes he could have lived in that time, in that time period where Joyboy lived, right? And where I'm going with this is, remember how Zunisha is referring to Luffy's awakening, specifically when Luffy awakens and the drums beating dum, right? He says that Joyboy is back, which means that awakening is Joyboy. So maybe that individual that was called Joyboy back in the Void Century, right? Maybe they awakened the Gomu Gomu no Mi, right? And they had as goofy an imagination as Luffy, which is why the depiction of the sun god Nikka is the same as in the way that Luffy awakened it, right? So maybe, just maybe, after that time period, right? I think it's possible that it got affected by Joyboy's will, so much so that his soul remained in that fruit, to where whenever Joyboy died, right, maybe his soul remained attached to the devil fruit itself. So maybe it was originally a paramecia or something, right? So maybe that's how it became a logia, to where maybe, yes, it does have a will of its own, but it's still just a paramecia devil fruit. So the point is, maybe Joyboy's soul in that devil fruit, it's now a paramecia fruit that has a will of its own. Therefore, that's how it's a Zoan, and it's a mythical one, because Joyboy can be considered a mythical entity based on the things that he did. Because even the legends of today, like Roger, they wish, they revere to live in that time period that Joyboy lived in, right? And we still have people waiting for Joyboy or just Nikka. So maybe when that happened, Joyboy saw into that fruit, right? And then when the next time it got reincarnated, it still had Joyboy's his will in that fruit, which transforms it into a mythical Zoan, essentially. And people refer to Sun God because maybe the awakening was just so goofy that it made people smile, right? Like what Luffy's doing. But yeah, I don't think that I don't think that Oda would go in a route that's similar to what I was just talking about. But I think that could explain it in the way that, well, most people in the community are perceiving it as. But I think that it's actual reality augmentation, besides granting the user a rubber body. Because how else would the mythical aspect come into play, right? How would the human part come into play? What does rubber have to do with anything about the human food? The Luffy's awakening so far, it hasn't shown that human aspect to me, right? Except for maybe when he's doing this weird shit, augmenting reality, he's running across the tracks. It could be explained as that. Unless the Sun God in the One Piece world is actually an entity that's known for having different abilities as what I imagine a Sun God would have, right? So maybe Oda's gonna explain that and the other gods in the One Piece world. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Luffy's Food Gear 5. Luffy's going crazy, Oda's going... I can't wait for more of this weird, goofy shit. So yeah, leave your thoughts down below, your theories, and yeah, please like, subscribe, and share. See you in the next one. Peace.